Okay, everyone. So I'm going to work through the multiple choice on the practice exam here. Let's get this started. So question 1. So lead is an important input in the production of crystal, which just means it produces crystal that they're making. So if the price of the lead decreases, then we expect what? The supply of crystal, well, we expect it to increase. So here we have our supply curve we're initially starting off with. Since this lead is an input, and since the price is decreasing, well, that's going to lead to an increase in profitability. And as a result of that, you're going to see an increase in supply. That's going to shift it over to the right. All right, so that's C. Okay, question 2. Which of the following events would cause a movement upward and to the right along the supply curve for mangoes? Okay, so let's draw our curve. So our supply curve is upward sloping. What's going to cause this to happen? Well, it's an increase in the price level. Okay, you have an increase in the price of mangoes. It's going to move up this curve, and you're going to see an increase in quantity supplied. All right, so that's going to be D. Okay. All right. Now let's look at number 3. So which of the following could be the cross price elasticity of demand for two goods that are complements? Well, if cross price elasticity is less than 0 or it's negative, they're complements. All right. They go together. So if the price of the one increases, all right, so you're going to buy less of that, and because you use that, you pair that along with this other good because it's a complement, well, you're going to see a decrease in quantity demanded of that good. All right, and so you expect this to be negative. And so that's going to be A. Negative 1/3 will be the only answer there. All right, 4. Buyers are able to buy all they want to buy. Buyers are able to. Well, I messed that up. I put too many two buys. So buyers are able to buy all they want, and sellers are able to sell all they want to sell at when you have the equilibrium price, but not above or below the equal. So let's write this out. Did I write that right? So buyers are able to buy all they want to buy. Yeah, buyers are able to buy all they want to buy, and sellers are able to sell all they want to sell. So everybody's happy here. What we're saying here with this is that quantity supply is equal to quantity demand. You're going to be at this equilibrium price. And when that happens, these sellers are bringing their good on the market. They can sell it. Anybody that wants to purchase this good, these buyers, well, they can purchase it. All right, when you're in equilibrium, this is when you have this happen. And so that's D. All right, let's erase this. Five. Down here. There we go. Okay, now we're going to do some questions that have to do with looking at trade-offs, opportunity costs of production, and trade here. So we have this table we're going to use for these next few questions. And with that, these two countries can produce cheese or bread. And so 40 hours, they're going to give them both 40 hours. England can produce 40 cheese and 10 bread. Spain can produce 10 cheese and 5 bread. And this is what they can produce here. All right. So 5 wants to know, England has an absolute advantage in the production of what? Well, they have the absolute advantage of both of these because in 40 hours, they can produce 40 cheese, which is more than 10 for Spain. And they can also produce 10 bread compared to 5 for Spain. All right. So let's see here. England has an absolute advantage in both of these. Absolute advantage is looking like how efficient you are, like looking at, how many resources that you need to produce these goods. And here the resource is labor hours. And so with the same amount of labor hours, England can produce a lot more of these goods than Spain. 6. The opportunity cost of 1 unit of cheese for England is what? Well, let's look at, England can either, if they spend all their time making cheese, they can produce 40, and they can spend all their time bread, they can produce 10. So if they're spending their time making 40 cheese, they're giving up on making this 10 bread. So to get the opportunity cost of 1 unit of cheese, we just divide both sides here by 40 here. We want to get this down to 1 cheese. What's that going to be equivalent to? Well, 1/4 of a unit of bread. That's the opportunity cost here. So that's going to be A. Now, 7, England should specialize in production of what? Well, they should find what they had the comparative advantage in. So let's find Spain's opportunity cost for cheese, and then we can determine who, does that, and we'll know who should do what. So Spain can either make 10 cheese or 5 bread. So to get that in terms of opportunity cost of 1 unit, right, we'll divide both these by 10. That'll give that to 1 cheese. And so what that's going to be is 1/2 of a unit of bread. Okay. Now, well, to find out who should specialize in what, we want to see who has a comparative advantage. So we'll see who has a comparative advantage in cheese. Well, to do this, you look at the opportunity cost. Whoever has a lower opportunity cost has a comparative advantage, and they should specialize in that good. Well, England, opportunity cost is 1/4 bread. What about Spain? Well, it's 1/2 of bread. That's the opportunity cost of 1 unit of cheese for them. So as we can see, the opportunity cost is lower with England. So England has a comparative advantage, and so they should specialize in making cheese. All right, so England should specialize in the production of cheese, and Spain should specialize in the production of bread. Because whoever has comparative advantage in one good, the other country will have the comparative advantage in the other. Okay, that's the way it works. So this is going to be A. Spain should specialize in cheese. I'm sorry, England should specialize in cheese. Spain should specialize in bread here. All right, let's erase these. Let me erase this too. What are we left with here? Well, it wants us to know, what's a reasonable price here, right? Okay, so we want to find, which of the following prices of both England and Spain gain from trade with each other. So it needs to be within the reasonable terms of trade here. And so we can look at the high price. So we know the high price here is going to be, because we know the opportunity cost of 1 unit of cheese for Spain is 1/2 of a bread. All right. So Spain kind of sets the high price. All right. If Spain has to produce more than half a unit of bread for 1 unit of cheese, they're better off doing it themselves here. So they don't. This trade needs to stay below this 1/2 to benefit Spain. What about the low price? Well, let's look at England. Their opportunity cost, a cheese for 1 unit was 1/4 of bread. All right. So if they go below this, well, it's not any good for them. Like, they're producing this cheese to trade with Spain to get this, bread. And if they're getting less than 1/4 a unit for each one, it's not worth their while. They'll just like spend their time producing it themselves. They'll be better off. So it needs to stay between 1/2 and 1/4 here. So if you look at these prices here, what you can do is you can convert it. What we're going to do is look at C. This is the correct answer. We have 16 units of bread or 48 units of cheese. So to get this in terms of the cost of cheese, where where it's expressed in units of bread, well, just divide both sides by 48. All right. So 1 unit of cheese for 1/3 of a unit of bread. So you can see this is 1/3 between 1/2 and 1/4 of bread here. So that's a good price. They'll both benefit here. They'll be able to consume more, because they're specialized in producing more of what they're good at or what they're the best at, and then trading one another. Because we see that this is the thing. Even though England has an absolute advantage, and they're better at producing both of them, they're even better, even more efficient at producing this cheese, and that's why they should specialize in that. Okay. Number 9, two goods are complements. When the decrease in the price of one good leads, when the price of one good, two goods are complements when a decrease in the price of one good leads to an increase in the demand for the other good. All right. So they're complements, they go together. If the price of this one good is cheaper, you're going to buy more of that, and you want to pair it with this other good, so you're going to increase your demand for that other good. All right. So that's going to be D. Yeah. Let's erase this. So 10, what would happen to the equilibrium price and quantity of coffee? First, if the wages of the coffee bean pickers fell and the price of tea fell. So we have these two events that are occurring here. Let's draw out our diagram. Oh, got the wrong one. Okay, let's draw out this is our market here for coffee. Got our supply and demand here. All right. So here's where we're starting out at. This is our equilibrium price, or we're beginning with. There's our equilibrium quantity. So two events. The first one, wages are decreasing. All right, this is an input. And since this is an input and it's getting cheaper, this input price is cheaper, well, it's going to increase profitability. And when you have that happen, you're going to increase supply. So supply is going to increase here. All right. What's the second event? Well, the price of tea falls. And what is tea to coffee? It's a substitute. They both have caffeine. If we drink them to like kind of get some caffeine, kind of get some energy in them. And since tea is cheaper, well, now coffee is relatively more expensive to tea. So people are going to substitute away from the coffee and purchase more tea. So that's going to decrease demand here. Okay. And so what happens, this demand will decrease. And what happens to the price level? We see both events make the price level drop. So we know price is going to decrease. What about quantity? Well, you don't really know. It kind of depends on how large the shifts are. And I don't really say anything about that on this question. So that's indeterminate. And so the answer to that would be A. Price will fall. And the equilibrium quantity we're not sure about. We would need more information for that one. Okay. 11. All right. So we refer to this diagram. He wants to know, which one of these produces the smallest elasticity. And so if you're comparing at different points to all these as you move across, well, D3, since it's the steepest, is the least elastic. It's more inelastic, or it's lesser elastic here. Okay. And so that's going to be C here. Okay. That's the one where, for whatever reason, the consumers they're not responding quite as much to price changes. It's probably like a necessity or a good like that, or it's like, it's looking at things in the short term instead of the long term where people can't really change their spending habits quickly. But for whatever reason, it's, D3, the steeper curve is less inelastic. That's because the change in quantity demanded is smallest in that as you change price levels. Okay, 12. A movement along the supply curve. So let's draw this real quick. A movement along the supply might be caused by a change in what? Well, we know this is always going to be caused from a change in the price level when you see a movement along the curve. Okay. That's what causes these movements. Okay, it's always the price here. So that's going to be D. All right, let's erase this. Now we're on 13. Which of the following changes would not shift the demand curve for a good or service? So a change in income, that's a demand shifter. A change in the price of the goods or service, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be, all these other things that are related to demand, they're going to shift the demand curve. But the price, when it changes, it just causes a movement along it. C, a change in expectations about the future price of the good or service. That'll affect like how you spend, how you want to purchase goods now. If it's going up in the future, well, you want to try to buy as much as you can, so that'll increase demand. And a change in the price of a related good or service, whether it's substitute or complement, that'll shift the demand curve when you have a change in these related goods and their price level. Okay, so that's going to be B. 14. Which of the following is not a determinant of demand? So this one's going to be A. The price of a resource is used to produce a good. That affects supply, not demand. All these other things affect demand, but that one, price of a substitute, price of a complement, price of the good next month in the future, all those affect demand, but the price of the resources only affects supply here. So that's A. Oh, go out. Oh, shoot. Well, it looks like that keyboard went out. Let's see here. Okay. Heck, well, yeah, I thought I'm gonna go in here. Yeah, sorry about this. I don't know why this is not in here. There we go. Well, my mouse is not working. This is working, but not the mouse. Okay. There we are. Okay. Sorry about that. Man. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what was up with my keyboards. All right, so now we can go to 15 here. All right, just looking at a diagram, let's draw this out because we use that for both of these. All right. We're looking at supply and demand here for a good. Now our equilibrium here, if you notice, it's at $25 and 400 for the quantity here. The equilibrium price is 25, equilibrium quantity is 400. And so the answer to that is going to be C. That's what it's asking for on 15. What's the equilibrium price and quantity? So 16, at what price would there be an excess supply of 200 units of the good? So you want the quantity supply to be 200 units more here. And if you notice, if you look at price of 30, the quantity supplied there is going to be 500, and the quantity demanded is going to be at 300. All right, so that's a surplus, 500 minus 300 of 200, which is what we want here. And so that's going to be C here. Okay. All right. 17. Danita rescues dogs from her local animal shelter. When Danita's income rises by 7%, her quantity demanded of dog biscuits increases by 12%. So her income's rising. It's like, okay, I like this good. It's, I want to spend more of it. All right. So for Danita, the income elasticity demand for the dog biscuits is positive. Positive change in income, positive change in quantity demanded. And what does that mean? That means dog biscuits are normal good. All right. You're not want to, now that you get a higher income, you're not want to substitute away to something that you consider a higher quality. Like what if she went to doggy steaks or something like that? But she's not. This is a normal good for her. Even though her income's went up, she's going to, instead of replace it with something else, she's going to demand more of it actually. So this would be considered, a normal good, these dog biscuits for her. So 17 here will be D. A production possibilities frontier is a straight line when C, the rate of trade-off between the two goods being produced is constant. That means as you move down this line, this trade-off, the opportunity cost is always going to be the same between them. It's held constant here. 19, when two countries gain from trading two goods, let's look at the choices here. And when the first country can only produce the first good and the second country can only produce the second good. Well, that's a good reason to trade, all right? Because, the first country may want the second good and the second country may want some of the first good. So that's a reason to trade. What about B? When the first country can produce both goods, but can only produce the second good at great cost, and the second country can produce both goods, but only can produce the first good at great cost. All right, so here they both, one of them has a comparative advantage of one good, and one the other here. Okay, that's why it's talking about the cost, or the opportunity cost. So that's a reason for them to trade. What about C? When the first country is better at producing both goods, the second country is worse at producing both goods. Well, that's not relevant here. What's relevant is if one of them has a comparative advantage, and if in one good, and the other one will have the comparative advantage in the other one. The absolute advantage doesn't matter here. Okay, and that's what the C is talking about. So they can still want to trade with each other. So it's going to be all these conditions here, D. All of the above. And that, like I said, that's an important thing to remember. It doesn't matter if one country is better at producing every good. They still want to, take advantage of what they're really, really good at. Take advantage of that, produce more of that, and then let some other country produce some of this other good for them. All right. Get this erased off. And we'll continue on. This on here. Comparative advantages are related most closely to which of the following? Well, it has to do with your opportunity cost. B. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at who has the lowest opportunity cost. In that case, they have the comparative advantage. All right. It's costing them the least. They're losing the least by producing this good. So let them specialize in that. They have the comparative advantage in it. 21. Total output in an economy increases when each person specializes because, it's B. Each person, they spend more time doing what they're really good at. And because of that, they can produce a lot more. And then they can trade some of this excess with people and everybody gets to consume more. That's the benefit of trade. Whether you're talking about, trade within a country between different people or trade between countries. Both cases, there can be a benefit and people are going to consume more as a result of specialization. Okay, 22. So let's look at the trade-off here. They got these two production possibilities frontier. All right. You have it's between couch and chairs. Those are the two things they can produce. A's bowed. B, though, is a straight line, constant. It's a constant trade-off. And so what 22 wants to know is the rate of travel between producing chairs and producing couches depends on how many chairs and couches are being produced in, well, panel A. For this to be relevant, there needs to be like the slope needs to change. As you can see, the slope's real flat here, but it gets steep here. So this means the trade-off or the opportunity cost is increasing for chairs as you keep producing more and more of them. Whereas in B here, this slope's constant, it's the same. It doesn't matter, what quantity of couches and chairs are producing. The opportunity cost is always going to be the same here. So it's going to be panel A. 23. Other things equal, when the price of a good rises, the quantity supplied of the good also rises. And when the price falls, the quantity supplied falls as well. Well, this is just the law of supply. Okay. This is where you're holding all these other factors constant. These supply shifters like the input costs, number of sellers, things like that. You're holding them constant. And what happens when the price rises? Well, that's going to increase profitability for a lot of firms. And so they'll increase the supply when that happens. 24. When we move along a given supply curve, all right, what's happening is we're keeping like all these non-price determinants constant. All right, that's related to this. Other things equal. All these other things are remaining equal, but the price is changing. And as it moves along this curve, well, it's going to cause movement along when the price changes here. Okay. 25. When we move along a given demand curve, it's the same thing here. We're keeping all these other things constant, like income of people, the price of complements, price of substitutes, future prices. We're keeping all those constant, and that's what this one demand curve is showing. As you change, prices, well, then it moves along. All these other things are being held constant. So let's see. All right, 26. 26, the greater the price elasticity of demand, well, it's going to be the greater the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price. All right, you're going to see a big change in quantity demanded from a small change in price. That's because it's really elastic here. Okay. Now, when it's